Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling faced a barrage of taunts in Parliament today from Conservatives who accused them of being at loggerheads. It comes after the Chancellor's surprise accusation that briefings by Number 10 had unleashed what he called the forces of hell when he'd predicted how severe the recession would be. But as our Deputy Political Editor James Landale reports, the two men were putting on a show of unity today.
Together, they hold a fragile economy in their hands. Together, they're preparing a crucial budget and election. And yet the Chancellor's talking openly about past differences, not least when he controversially predicted 2 years ago that Britain was facing the worst economic conditions for 60 years.
The weekend after we came back and, I'd done this interview and, the forces of hell were unleashed.
By Number 10?
I tell you, not just then, the Tories as well. I do not know why the briefers, if you like, did what they did. One day maybe they'll explain. What I do know is that, yes, unfortunately, and it's not a great source of pleasure, what I said did turn out to be true, as we well know.
Indeed it did, but that prediction left the Chancellor bruised and assailed on all sides. Today, while the Tories claim Mr Darling was still at odds with Mr Brown, Chancellor and Prime Minister sat shoulder to shoulder.
6 weeks before an election, with a record budget deficit, at the end of a long recession, I want to ask why the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are at war with each other.
We, us, at war? Surely not.
Any closer and they'll start kissing.
Not quite that, but certainly not at war, then or now.
I never instructed a briefing against the Chancellor.
But Mr Cameron pressed on.
In front of all these people who've worked with him for so long, after 27 ministerial resignations, after 3 attempts to get rid of him, get to your feet and tell us you knew nothing about the briefing against the Chancellor.
He's not doing very well. He has asked me the same question 3 times and I've answered it. Now, let us... Mr Speaker, I would rather be defending my Chancellor than be in his position having to defend his shadow Chancellor.
It's not the first time a Chancellor has fallen out with his boss. Nigel Lawson disagreed with Margaret Thatcher over exchange rates. Mr Brown was frequently at odds with Tony Blair over strategy as much as policy. And now he too has had differences with his own Chancellor. To some, Alistair Darling was simply asserting his independence ahead of the crucial budget. To others, he was revealing just how angry he felt at the way he'd been treated. Either way, his remarks have added to questions about the way some people in that building have gone about their business.
Challenging week for Gordon Brown, but
and for the Prime Minister himself, pressure on the TV sofa.
So firstly, I have to ask you, are you a bully?
No. I get angry sometimes. Doesn't everybody?
The Cabinet Secretary insisted that he'd never talked to the Prime Minister about bullying behaviour, but said he had spoken to him about how best to deal with his staff.
I've never talked to the Prime Minister about his behaviour in relation to bullying Number 10 staff, but of course I talked to the Prime Minister about how to get the best out of his civil servants.
Politics is a rough trade, and it's no surprise that Prime Ministers and Chancellors sometimes disagree. But few air their differences this close to an election. James Landale, BBC News, Westminster.
And we can talk to our political editor, Nick Robinson, now. Nick, so it was all cosy today. Is that the way it really is?
Well, they work next door to each other. They live next door to each other. The Darlings even occasionally babysit for the Browns' children. So this is a relationship which is complex. But the reason it is now difficult, the reason it seems to me that the Chancellor really let it out, his frustration, his hurt, his anger that he'd been briefed again, is he knows one crucial fact, George, that at the last reshuffle, cabinet reshuffle, it was the Prime Minister's intention up until merely hours before it to move him, to get rid of him. And that means that Alistair Darling now knows he is in a place the Prime Minister doesn't want him, but he also knows he's powerful. He can pretty much say or do what he likes. And in the way that may be just so much Westminster soap opera and you may not care, the reason it matters is that the Chancellor now has to write a budget, a crucial pre-election budget at a time of major economic difficulty. The question is whether that past disagreement colours their decision-making about what to do now, about tax and spend and the huge budget deficit.
All right, Nick, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.